In 1994, Jeff Bezos saw one stat that made him quit his Wall Street job. The internet was growing 2,300% a year.
I'm the founder of Amazon.com.
Where did you get an idea for Amazon.com?
Well, 3 years ago, I was in New York City working for a quantitative hedge fund when I came across the startling statistic that web usage was growing at 2,300% a year. So I decided I would try and find a business plan.
That one decision turned into a $2.3 trillion empire called Amazon. But what if I told you that Michael Saylor just made an even bigger bet? One that's growing faster than the early internet. One that's already worth $40 billion. And one that Wall Street thinks is just as crazy as they thought Amazon was. Crazy, right? Today, I'm going to show you why MicroStrategy's Bitcoin play might make Amazon look small. And why almost everybody is missing it. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Let's go.
You need to identify your big ideas, and there should only be 2 or 3 of them. The good news is that the big ideas are usually incredibly easy to identify. You shouldn't need to think about them very much. You already know what they are. Let me give you an example. For Amazon, the consumer business, the 3 big ideas are low prices, fast delivery, and vast selection. And the good thing about these big ideas is they will be stable in time. So I know for a fact that 10 years from now, customers are still going to like low prices. No matter what happens with technology and everything else, no matter what happens, people are going to like faster delivery. It is impossible for me to imagine a scenario where 10 years from now, a customer comes to me and says, Jeff, I love Amazon. I just wish you delivered a little more slowly.
When Jeff Bezos joined D.E. Shaw in 1990, it was clear that he was a superstar. He became the youngest VP at the company at age 30, and they put Bezos in charge of special growth projects, like creating a competitor to the New York Stock Exchange, or the first free email service provider called Juno, which paved the way for applications like Gmail. Jeff was rising fast in his career and would meet weekly one-on-one with the CEO to discuss new opportunities and ideas that they could build within D.E. Shaw. One of those ideas turned out to be this thing called the Everything Store. In researching the Everything Store, Jeff saw a stat that the internet was growing 2,300% a year. And so, he decided to leave D.E. Shaw to start Amazon, which went public in 1997. In his first shareholder letter, Jeff Bezos said that it was day one on the internet for Amazon. He made sure to remind people that he was betting on the internet and that it was a long-term play, and that the internet wasn't just a thing, it would consume all things that we buy and shop for online. Similarly, Michael Saylor made a long-term bet on Bitcoin. Bitcoin, like Bezos with the internet, is his big idea.
This guy Satoshi came along and discovered a method to transfer value without a trusted intermediary. And everybody repeats it ad infinitum. Satoshi figured out how to send something of value between 2 people without an intermediary. But that wasn't the brilliant idea. The idea that's so profound it shakes the foundation of the economy is that Satoshi figured out a method to store value without a trusted intermediary. Because sending the value, it's like a little bit better than Visa or the Fed wire. Storing the value, well, that makes it the most useful thing for $450 trillion of capital. That's worth $10 trillion a year. That's the big idea.
Jeff Bezos' prediction about the internet and its growth was right, because in the early 2000s, there were just tens of millions of people using the internet. And today, there's over 5 billion people using the internet. There were just $29 billion in sales in 2000 on the internet, and today, there's $6.6 trillion of online sales. The tide seems to be turning right now, as there seems to be a new play for the majority of growth in the 21st century, and that's Bitcoin. Since 2020, when MicroStrategy adopted its Bitcoin strategy, it's outperformed Amazon by a long shot. MicroStrategy stock is up over 2,000% versus just 70% with Amazon. The most amazing thing about Bitcoin is that Michael Saylor saw that he could strap on a digital monopoly growing 60% a year without any of the burden or headache of having to grow that sort of way internally or by acquiring another company.
We had to do something. Our initial foray into Bitcoin was defensive, or it's just frustration, defense. It's either that or sell the company. So if you're not going to sell the company, you can die slowly, you can die quickly, or you can do a transformational acquisition. You can take a risk, and that was our transformational acquisition. What if you could buy a $500 million company growing 60% a year, which looks like its own digital monopoly, and you could bolt it on to a company that's growing not 0 to 5% a year, that's not a monopoly.
In order for Amazon to grow to the level that it is today, it had to hire 1.5 million employees, build a logistics network that operates 24 hours a day, and will likely have to replace many of those humans with robots just to maintain its level of profitability. It had to grow multiple businesses, launch multiple products like Kindle or the Fire Phone, which failed, and even AWS, just in order to get to the level that it is today. And all of these things are at risk because now the governments have their eye on them as a monopoly and are looking to potentially break them up, even under a Trump administration. Listen to what Kash Patel, the new Trump administration member, had to say about Amazon.
Amazon and Bezos have a ton of government contracts, especially in the defense sector space, in the national security space, and the cloud space. So maybe we take a look at those if these guys don't want to come clean about everything they've done to rig and censor an election.
In my opinion, the risk of investing into monopolies right now are understated. Michael Saylor pointed out this very fact in an interview about a year ago.
Now, there's two problems with investing in those Magnificent Seven stocks today, in my opinion. And the one problem is everybody knows they're good, and everybody knows they're essential, and so the market is adjusted, and that means that they're not undervalued. The second problem is the regulators and politicians will increasingly target them. They're targets because they're companies, whether it's targets to unionize or targets to fine or targets to regulate or targets to embargo or lever or censor, or, they're just, or tax, they're just targets. And that's challenging. And the third is they're companies. And this is related to the second problem, but it's a much deeper idea, which is a company is a capital structure, and the capital structure has a finite capacity for you to invest in. So, for example, if the stock of a company triples overnight, like Meta doubled the other day, if it doubles, then and it's valued based on cash flows, and then the cash flows have to double. If you double it again, the cash flows have to double again. If you increase the stock value by a factor of 10, expectations for cash generation have to increase by a factor of 10. That makes them even stronger cash derivatives in a period when you have inflationary money. So you're valued on cash flows, the money is losing its value, and so the debasement of the currency strikes at the heart of the value proposition of the company as a store of value. So that makes them increasingly risky and fragile. And that's exacerbated by the fact that there's massive political pressure in the conventional financial environment for them to return their capital to their shareholders.
Before we continue any further into this episode, I want to invite you to do two things. Subscribe to this channel. You won't find original content like this anywhere else on the internet. And I want to highlight our sponsor, The Bitcoin Way. On this show, I always want to make it a point to talk about the importance of buying, owning, and securing real Bitcoin. You'll probably begin seeing ads on exchanges to say, buy Bitcoin and crypto, but they won't teach you about the importance of taking self-custody of what you own. And that's exactly why the Bitcoin Way exists. Members of their team will walk you through proper 100% self-custody, step by step, so you can remove all the counterparty risk, stop sharing keys with third parties, and ensure you protect your generational wealth the right way. Go to thebitcoinway.com and schedule a free 30-minute consult with their team today.
One observation I would have is that I think it's generally human nature to overestimate risk and underestimate opportunity. And so I think entrepreneurs in general, would be well advised to try and bias against that piece of human nature. The risks are probably not as big as you perceive, and the opportunities may be bigger than you perceive. And so when you say it's confidence, but maybe it's just trying to compensate for that that accepting that that's a human bias and trying to compensate against it. The second thing I would point out is that, thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
People who look at MicroStrategy buying 402,000 Bitcoin worth $40 billion think that this is a risky proposition. But they don't understand that Michael Saylor is thinking like Bezos. He believes that people far underestimated an enterprise software company growing at just 5% a year with $500 million on its balance sheet and its ability to survive, versus a Bitcoin treasury company going in on one of the greatest and fastest growing assets and best money that humans have ever created.
Every day for the past 4 years, I've said, buy Bitcoin, don't sell the Bitcoin. I'm going to be buying more Bitcoin. I'm going to be buying Bitcoin at the top forever. I joked with Dave Portnoy today. He said, I missed it at 10,000. I missed it at 20,000. I missed it at 100,000. I said, Dave, it's still less than $1 million a coin. You're getting a 90% discount from $1 million a coin. I'm sure that I will be buying Bitcoin at $1 million a coin, probably $1 billion a day of Bitcoin at $1 million a coin. And so I think it's a very simple idea. It's just keep buying Bitcoin with your spare capital. It's going to appreciate against the dollar forever.
Over the past several decades, Jeff Bezos had to constantly remind investors that the internet is a long-term play. He had to make sure that they didn't just look at the volatility of its shares on the stock market and look at the longer-term picture. The Amazon 2000 shareholder letter is the most famous investment letter of all time. Its first word started with ouch. Amazon stock was down 85% that year, and Jeff Bezos had to remind them of a quote from Benjamin Graham. In the short term, the stock market is a voting machine, but in the long term, it's a weighing machine. He then went out to display a bunch of metrics of how Amazon was a heavier company more and more increasingly every day that it existed. Saylor is doing the exact same thing. He's talking about what the playbook is and the long-term future implications of investing into that playbook and into Bitcoin.
What are we going to do? Well, we're going to do this $42 billion and then rinse and repeat and double it and double it and double it and double it. And you're going to say like, well, where does it end? Well, I guess when we've taken 1% of the fixed income market, which is $3 trillion, and when we levered it up and we've got 10 billion, we bought 3 trillion of Bitcoin and we're trading at $10 trillion in market cap, we'll be growing 20% a year.
I'll ask you this question. What's your time horizon with Bitcoin? Do you believe that it's going to be better and around in 10 years? Do you think it's a big idea that will persist into the future?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it like Manhattan real estate, the year is 1650. And if you had a chance to buy it in every decade from 1650 to today, wouldn't you just keep buying it? If you didn't have to pay property tax and you could hold it, you would just keep accumulating it forever. There's never a bad time to buy it. There's a Saylor tracker. You can look at it. It just shows we bought at every price point, every quarter, at the highs, at the lows, at the mids. I bought it every week for the past 4 weeks in a size billion or more. I'm going to just keep buying it. And it's not that complicated. I expect that it'll be the most valuable thing in the world 100 years from now. So why wouldn't you just keep accumulating it?
Over the long term, do you see pro-Congress being good or bad for Bitcoin? Over the long term, do you see traditional Wall Street adopting spot Bitcoin ETFs as a good thing or a bad thing? Over the long term, do you see millennials and younger generations going into investing into analog stores of value like gold or real estate? Or do you see them investing into things like Bitcoin and crypto? If you put it like that, the long-term implications of Bitcoin aren't that risky. So before I close out this video, I want to do a recap comparing Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy to Jeff Bezos and Amazon, like I did with Warren Buffett in a couple episodes ago. Here's how the two compare. The similarities are striking. From a personality standpoint, they're both risk-taking engineers, which is rare, that are first principle thinkers. Their communication style is clear, transparent, and consistent. Everybody knows what they're going to do, and they do exactly what they say they will do. Each of them fundamentally have one big idea. Michael Saylor believes that Bitcoin represents digital capital, and Jeff Bezos believed that the internet was the everything store. The light bulb moment for Michael Saylor was that there was a digital monopoly that he could acquire that was growing 100% a year. For Jeff Bezos, it was the internet growing 2,300% a year. MicroStrategy only has 2,500 employees versus Amazon, which has 1.5 million employees. It looks like MicroStrategy might be a more efficient way to bootstrapping a $1 trillion or $10 trillion enterprise. Their investment time horizons are both from decades to forever. Jeff Bezos has been working on the 10,000-year clock, believing that we should build things that last beyond us as humans. The Wall Street perception of their companies are that they're both risky propositions, and they don't know how to value these new types of companies with traditional valuation methods. The current market cap of MicroStrategy is about $90 billion as of this recording, and the market cap of Amazon is about $2.3 trillion. I want to talk about the first big idea potentially leading to others. For MicroStrategy, it's the Bitcoin treasury company leading to something like a Bitcoin bank, where they might be a company that lends against their Bitcoin holdings or does other things into the future. Now, they don't quite know exactly what that will be yet. And for Amazon, they started off as a bookstore company that grew into a hardware company, and then offered Amazon Prime and AWS and all sorts of other businesses on top of that core fundamental idea. The sky is the limit for what MicroStrategy could be, and we're just at the early innings. And that's why I believe that MicroStrategy will be significantly larger than Amazon in 10 to 20 years. It's hard to believe now, but you have to take a longer term approach. What do you think? Do you think that MicroStrategy will one day be bigger than Amazon? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Before I let you go, I want to invite you to a special event that's happening in Dallas, Texas on April 3rd through April 6th, the BitBlockBoom Conference. It's been running 8 years strong, and it's getting bigger and better every single year. People from all over the world will come to hear speakers like Gary Leland, Parker Lewis, Marty Bent, Bob Burnett, Guy Swan, and even me. Your ticket is all-inclusive and gives you access to Bitcoin beginner workshops, like how do I buy my first Bitcoin? How do I get set up with mining? It also gives you access to exclusive events like our Saturday casino night. Get $100 off your ticket by going to BitBlockBoom.com and entering the promo code BBB25. That's BBB25 at BitBlockBoom.com. I hope to see you there. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Happy stacking.